You've probably seen a ton of shows about mechanics building jaw-dropping trucks, right? But if you've ever watched Diesel Brothers, you know there's something different about it. It wasn't just the trucks that stood out. Yeah, they were massive, but they had this crazy raw power, like they could run over anything in their way. But the real magic? It wasn't in the trucks, it was in the friendship at the center of it all, Heavy D and Diesel Dave. These two didn't just build machines, they built something that felt bigger than the vehicles themselves. They poured tens of thousands into each build, pushing the limits until even a basic truck didn't feel basic anymore. But what if the trucks were only the beginning? What if, beneath all that power, there was a side to Diesel Dave's life that nobody saw coming? This isn't just about trucks anymore. It's about a moment that nearly cost Diesel Dave everything. It's a day that started like any other. Heavy D had this crazy love for snowcats, those massive 20,000-pound behemoths built to crush mountains of snow. And for years, he'd been carving out a path on a dangerous road near his cabin in Utah. In the summer, it was easy to drive up there, but in winter, it was a completely different beast. One section of the road ran along a cliff, with a drop that could send you plummeting 1,000 feet. The road was narrow, barely 12 feet wide, and buried in snow that piled up like a wall. But that didn't stop Heavy D. No, he'd bring in snowcats to carve out a trail for skiers and snowmobilers. And on January 27, 2018, he and Diesel Dave decided to take the trip up there with their families. Heavy D was no stranger to this, but for Diesel Dave, this was one of his first times behind the wheel of a snowcat. The day started smoothly enough. The red snowcat plowed through the snow, cutting into the drifts with ease. But then, the unthinkable happened. The slope above them gave way and the snow started sliding, pulling the entire snowcat toward the edge of the cliff. The machine teetered, its massive weight pressing dangerously close to the 1,000-foot drop. The trio froze in place, their hearts racing, unsure of what would happen next. One wrong move, and they could all be gone. They made the decision to shut the machine down, then hiked back to the cabin through waist-deep snow. Diesel Dave took off to find help while Heavy D and Charlie made their way behind, making noise to scare off coyotes in the dark. When they reached the cabin, they discovered the gray snowcat's battery was dead. No problem. They kick-started it, left the kids behind, and headed back up to save the red snowcat. But by the time they reached the red cat, it was hanging dangerously off the edge, and they came up with a plan. The idea was simple. Hook up the chain from the gray snowcat, use it as an anchor, and slowly pull the red one back to safety. At first, it looked like it was working. The red snowcat started inching back toward solid ground. But then the chain snapped, and just like that, Diesel Dave was gone. The red snowcat twisted and tumbled, disappearing into the blackness below. For a split second, Heavy D thought he had just watched his best friend die. He dropped to his knees, screaming, praying that somehow Dave would survive. His mind raced. He could try to climb down the cliff, but that might get him killed too. Then a voice told him to drive instead. He made the call. He didn't know how, but he knew he had to get to Dave somehow. Meanwhile, Diesel Dave, trapped inside the tumbling snowcat, didn't have much hope left. He hadn't buckled his seatbelt, something that's usually a rookie mistake. But in this case, it was the reason he survived. The machine flipped, the windshield popped out, and Dave was ejected. He tumbled down the mountain, rolling in the snow until he finally came to a stop, buried up to his waist. Stunned, barely able to move, Dave knew if Heavy D tried to come after him, they'd both be done. So, he did the one thing he could. He grabbed his phone. Heavy D couldn't believe it when his phone buzzed with Diesel Dave's name. He thought it was impossible. He'd just seen his best friend fall off a cliff. But then Dave's voice came through the phone, sounding calm as if nothing had happened. "I think I'm okay." Heavy D jumped into the gray snowcat and made his way down to the bottom of the cliff. What he found was chaos, broken glass, twisted steel, and pieces of the red snowcat scattered across the slope. But there, in the snow, was Dave. Somehow, miraculously, he was alive. He'd been thrown from the cab, landed in soft snow, and avoided the frozen pond below. If anything had been different, he'd be gone. It was a miracle. But they weren't out of the woods yet. Now they had to pull the red snowcat out. They tried everything, chains, winches, even dragging the machine onto a frozen pond. But nothing worked. They had to pull it out piece by piece, and the effort nearly froze them all. Heavy D would never forget that moment. Watching his best friend disappear off that cliff was something that would stay with him forever. But Diesel Dave's life-changing experience didn't end there. When you watch these two, you realize it's not just about the trucks, there's so much more than that. These guys, with their jokes, their passion, and their unshakable bond, made Diesel Brothers something more than just another show about cars. They made it feel like a journey, a story about friendship, passion, and the kind of bond that even the toughest trucks can't break. And that's the thing about Diesel Brothers. It's not just about what they build. It's about what they've been through, and why their fans feel so deeply connected to them. The trucks might be big, but the heart of this story? That's even bigger. It's easy to think the story of the Diesel Brothers is just about trucks, builds, and big machines, but there's so much more behind it. Four friends started out flipping trucks, creating viral videos, landing a late-night TV spot, and eventually turning it all into a global empire. But let's pause here. How did these guys come together in the first place? Well, buckle up, because this one's going to be a ride you didn't expect. You'd think that two guys with a passion for trucks would meet at a car meet or a garage, right? Well, not in this case. Diesel Dave and David Sparks didn't meet surrounded by engines or tools. Nope, they met at a church gathering for single people. The idea was for everyone to meet some potential dates, but instead, Sparks and Diesel Dave found each other. It wasn't love at first sight, but it was the start of something special, a friendship that would turn into a business partnership and a bond that would fuel the Diesel Brothers' empire. Years later, with their headquarters in Salt Lake City, Utah, the Diesel Brothers have built a whole universe of companies. Sparks Motors is where all the magic happens, the place where these insane trucks are born. Then there's Diesel Power Gear, a lifestyle brand where fans can snag clothes and truck parts, and Diesel Sellers, an online marketplace for trucks that's basically Craigslist, but with more horsepower. And, of course, they're famous for their epic truck giveaways, something they've done over and over again, bringing their brands together and giving fans a piece of the Diesel Brothers world. Now, if you've ever watched their show, you've probably noticed something different about their builds: military-grade parts. Yeah, we're talking about axles and six-wheel drive systems that you don't find in your average truck. Some viewers might think it's just for show, but for Sparks and Diesel Dave, it's about durability. They're building trucks for extreme conditions, and those parts are meant to survive the worst. A surplus military axle can be had for around $500, even though the government paid tens of thousands for it. Talk about a steal. These are the kind of parts that make their trucks stand out, but it's not just for looks. It's all about functionality, strength, and getting the job done no matter what. Now, you might be wondering, do Sparks and Diesel Dave have military backgrounds? Well, no. Neither of them served, but their families have deep military roots. Diesel Dave once tried to join as a helicopter pilot but got turned away due to a shoulder injury. Sparks' dad was in the Air Force, his grandfather served in the Army, and his brother was a Marine. Sparks has always said he would have loved to serve, but he just couldn't see himself taking orders. Still, through their business, they feel like they're giving back in their own way. For fans, one of the most shocking things about their builds is the jump from a standard axle to something like the military-grade 2.5-ton axles they use. But for Sparks, the standard axles feel weak, like a toothpick. If you invest in a Dana 60 axle, it's still a gamble it could break. But with military axles, breaking one of those would take some seriously bad luck. Still, not every truck they make is outfitted with military parts, only the ones that need to be built like tanks. As for the Diesel Brothers show itself, fans often ask how much of it is real. The answer? All of it. Well, kind of. Sure, some moments have been recreated for the cameras, like the time a Duramax truck caught fire in the first episode. While Sparks admits they set the stage to make a fire more likely, the fire ended up getting out of control, something that wasn't planned at all. They do have to recreate some things for the cameras, but the danger? That's very real. In fact, Sparks and Diesel Dave take safety seriously. They're like family, and their well-being always comes first. The Diesel brothers' success didn't come without a few bumps along the way, though. Their business has grown rapidly, and with it, the pressure has piled on. They now employ around 50 people across their various companies, and the workload is intense. For each episode of Diesel Brothers, they're building about 1.5 trucks. One is finished for the episode, and the other is prepped for the next one. At one point, they were juggling 18 episodes at once, which meant they were working on 27 builds simultaneously. That's no small feat, especially when you're trying to make each build unique and exciting, rather than repeating the same thing over and over again. Sparks says it's tough, but it's also what keeps the job fresh and makes their builds stand out. But as with any successful venture, not everything was smooth sailing. Behind the scenes, the Diesel brothers found themselves in a major legal battle. In 2016, a group of Utah doctors filed a lawsuit against them, accusing the Diesel brothers of intentionally removing pollution control systems from their diesel trucks. These trucks were known for rolling huge black clouds of smoke out of their exhaust pipes, a stunt called rolling coal, something that became iconic on the show and social media. While some fans thought it was just a cool trick, others started realizing that it was contributing to dangerous air quality in their community. This legal fight would go on for years, but it didn't stop the Diesel brothers from pushing forward with their builds. They've faced challenges, but they've also found ways to turn those challenges into opportunities. And through it all, one thing remains clear: whether they're building trucks, taking on legal battles, or just making people laugh, Diesel Dave and Sparks have always stuck together, proving that it's not just about the trucks, it's about the people behind them. The Diesel brothers' story took a wild turn when their trucks, known for spewing massive clouds of black smoke, became the center of a legal storm. Doctors in Utah, part of a group called Utah Physicians for a Healthy Environment, UPHE, filed a lawsuit in 2016, claiming that the Diesel brothers were deliberately removing pollution control systems from their diesel trucks, making them far more toxic than they should be. They argued that trucks built in the last decade, once stripped of their pollution controls, release more than 30 times the pollution compared to a stock, unmodified truck. A single tampered truck could do as much damage as dozens of clean-running ones. That's an increase of about 3,000% per truck. To give you a sense of scale, the doctors compared this to the infamous Volkswagen emissions scandal, where car companies secretly altered their vehicles to pass emissions tests. Dr. Tark Howie Gaba, one of the physicians involved in the lawsuit, didn't just focus on the legalities. He stressed that pollution controls aren't just for show. They protect public health, preventing diseases linked to air pollution. Once removed, these trucks, Garber said, become disease-generating machines. Dr. Brian Moch, another board member, didn't mince words either. Diesel exhaust, he said, is directly linked to severe health issues, heart attacks, strokes, lung disease, cancer, and even sudden death. He made it clear that intentionally making this kind of pollution is not just irresponsible, it's a flagrant disregard for the well-being of the community, especially when most vehicle owners follow the law and keep their trucks clean. So, the question quickly shifted from being about the trucks themselves to whether Diesel Dave and his crew were knowingly making their community sick. And that's where things got real messy. In 2020, U.S. District Judge Robert Shelby ruled that the Diesel brothers had committed about 400 violations of the Clean Air Act, including removing pollution equipment, selling illegal devices, and putting those trucks on the road. The penalties were hefty, a fine of $848,000, with most of it going to the federal government. The remaining $90,000 was set aside for a program in Utah aimed at fixing tampered trucks. On top of the fine, the judge issued a permanent injunction, meaning the Diesel brothers could never again remove pollution controls or sell modified trucks. If they did, they could be held in contempt of court. But the legal drama didn't stop there. The lawsuit actually started when the doctors saw the Diesel brothers' trucks on TV, spewing smoke and making waves. Under the Clean Air Act, private groups can sue if they believe environmental laws are being violated. UPEG went even further and bought one of the altered trucks, a 2013 Ford F-250. They tested it and found that it was emitting 36 times more pollution than a normal truck. They ended up spending $8,500 to restore the emissions equipment before selling it again. Then came the million-dollar trademark battle. Diesel, the Italian fashion brand, had been at odds with Diesel Power Gear, the Utah-based company behind Diesel Brothers' merch business, for years. Diesel had filed several trademark complaints, arguing that Diesel Power Gear was infringing on their trademark by using diesel on everything from shirts to accessories. In October 2019, the fight landed in federal court in New York. Diesel argued that the Utah company's use of the Diesel name diluted their brand and violated federal competition laws. In March 2022, the court ruled in favor of Diesel, granting summary judgment. Diesel Power Gear's use of diesel on their merchandise, the judge said, caused confusion and diluted Diesel's famous brand. The court found that Diesel Power Gear had acted willfully and recklessly. The damages? A staggering $59 million in net sales. After some back and forth, the judge reduced the award by 80%, leaving Diesel Power Gear liable for $11.8 million in damages. They were also barred from using the word diesel or any related marks in their branding, products, or promotions. It was a heavy blow to Diesel Power Gear, but it wasn't over yet. In 2020, the Diesel brothers' personal lives also took a tragic turn. Diesel Dave's daughter, Piper, was involved in a horrific car accident. It was Labor Day weekend when Piper's life changed forever. The crash left her in critical condition, and she spent months in the hospital, undergoing surgery after surgery, fighting for her life. By January 2021, Diesel Dave shared an emotional update, revealing that Piper was recovering against all odds. Her strength and resilience surprised the doctors, and she was proving to the world just how strong she was. During Piper's recovery, Diesel Dave and Diesel Power Gear launched a campaign called Piper Strong. They created limited edition shirts and decals, with all the proceeds going to help cover Piper's medical expenses. A breaking chapter in Diesel Dave's life, one that he never imagined he'd face. But despite the near-fatal accidents, the legal battles, and the public scrutiny, Diesel Dave and his brothers found a way to keep moving forward. The strength that Piper showed in her recovery, combined with the determination of the Diesel brothers, has become part of their story, a story that, like the trucks they build, keeps going despite the odds. So, after all the struggles, the question remains, how does Diesel Dave find the strength to keep pushing forward? How does he keep going after everything he's been through? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more. Before you go, check out the video that just popped up on your screen.